Now, when you talk about the tariff increase onto Chinese EV makers by EU, some of the latest developments are China has spoken with all their new energy vehicle cars or Chinese EV cars, selling cars outside of China, especially in Europe, to halt or to suspend their expansion for now, as they are still trying to strike a deal with the EU Commission, which of course this as a result is making companies to think twice before maybe they expand into Europe. Now, the reason why I'm telling you about this is, well, just recently we got, in fact I think yesterday we got some good news coming from the talks between, or the tariff increase talks between EU and China, right? I mean, they are saying that the EU apparently yesterday said that there's been some good progress between China and the EU Commission on the, of course, tariff increase which they have imposed onto Chinese EV makers like Nio. I mean, the EU executive team indicated that there has been a good technical progress on to this week's negotiations, and this progress will be taken to next week as they, of course, go and continue with these talks, and hopefully they struck a deal which will be beneficial on both sides, especially on the Chinese EV makers like Nio, because companies like Nio are not doing that well when it comes to sales in Europe. But the only destination where Nio is trying to perform better, it's in Norway, where we saw them selling record-breaking deliveries, I think of over 180 last month. Otherwise, other countries, that is Germany, Sweden, Netherlands, Denmark, they are not doing that well, which is something that is not good. And hopefully, with the negotiations still going on, we are going to continue seeing a deal being struck, which the end product or the result will make Nio to continue selling into Europe and make sure that they do well. I mean, there are sub-brands that Nio still need to start selling also in Europe, which hopefully those sub-brands will perform way better than the main brand of Nio, which as a result will bring in more revenues, which is what we want as investors. I mean, there is a sub-brand called Firefly, which it was supposed to be launched in Europe, or was supposed to be launched in Europe, but because of this tariff situation, Nio has now announced that they will do the official unveiling of that model during Nio Day 2024, which is coming on the 21st of December, which shows you the kind of delay these tariffs are putting onto the Chinese EV makers like Nio when it comes to penetrating the EU market. I know some people are saying EU is not important, Nio must not focus there, but in the long term, I believe they will need that market for growth. We will need that market, especially with the sub brands. Nio models, yes, they are expensive there, but sub brands can do absolutely well. They will be able to compete, and who knows, will be the one to lead Nio to open a car factory company in Europe, which will be something that we look forward to. So tell me what you think about this, man. These are the latest developments around the tariff increase situation, or the tariff or the trade talks between EU Commission and China. And hopefully we get to see more positive things, positive news coming from the negotiations, the discussions, even next week, because this then will also revive the sentiment around the Chinese automakers like Nio, because we do need the expansion. Wherever we can sell, I think we need to go sell. Wherever Nio has got a potential, we need to go sell. And I think Nio has got a potential in Europe. It might not be for Nio's main models, but it might be good for Firefly and Onvo. And more on Firefly, because Firefly, it is a sub-brand which I think it was made targeted at the European market, right? I mean, one thing that we know on projects when Nio specifically targets Europe, we have seen those projects doing well, way more than expected in China, like the ET5 Touring. You will know that the Touring ET5 was made primarily for Europe, but what we are seeing now in China, that model is doing exceptionally well. It is the second best-selling model, selling over 5,000 units on a month-to-month, which shows you of how much this model is contributing when it comes to the deliveries of Nio, even in China. I mean, this Firefly sub-brand, which I think they had Europe when they made it, chances are also the same that we'll see it doing way more in China than in Europe where they were made or where they were targeted for. So yeah, man, tell me what you think about this. I think we should brace ourselves for what's coming, and hopefully the negotiations, like I said, they spike some positive vibes, positive sentiment, and there's a solid ground that both parties get to agree, and we see the penetration going on in Europe, especially also for the sub-brands, because this week one thing that we saw, which might be leading or signaling that sub-brand Onvo might be penetrating Europe very soon, is that there was a online video call between Munich and China, where Onvo was talking to a Nio team in Munich about some of the things that Onvo is doing or has achieved, which is something that, of course, this already, it might be signaling, like I said, Onvo going to penetrate the European market. Now with Onvo, you'll know that they are not being sold at Nio stores, but rather Onvo has got its own stores in China, which that might be the same situation in Europe, where we see Onvo having their own stores, which Nio, with that, they have to be careful, or they need to make sure that they strategically place these Onvo stores and make sure that they see the reaction from people before they can just aggressively deploy the Onvo stores all over Europe. So I think that's what they are going to do for sure, right? Because we don't want to get a situation where there are quite a number of Onvo stores, but sales are not meeting or cannot even service the rentals and salaries, which is something that, of course, we don't want to see. So hopefully things get better for the sub-brands in Europe. I mean, there's a massive potential for Onvo and Firefly in Europe, and once they penetrate that market with their sub-brands, I think it will revive the sales so much that Nio ends up opening a factory in Europe. Otherwise, with all that, just thought I'd just give you this quick updates. Tell me what you think about this. I personally think that blue sky is coming. Those that are persevering throughout the headwinds of the share price will most definitely be rewarded with time. Long term will win. That's all from me, and God bless you all.